This is Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe.
Like, you gotta do the work. You gotta show up and just do the work.
What's up? What's up? Happy Monday. I hope everybody had a relaxing, calm, peaceful, rejuvenating weekend, and you are ready to get after it again here this week. That's why we're here. We're here to help you get after it with some inspiration and maybe some cool new information for you. So today, my guest is someone who's actually very formative in the way that Jumpstart Foundry turned out. When my partner Vic and I decided to go in full time, we both came in with this sort of really bad previous experience around culture, and we wanted to take the first year and be super intentional about the culture that we built. And we went and saw a couple of people. And one of the people that we went and saw was my guest for today, Parker Gates. Parker was probably the first person who I met who was an actual design thinking practitioner. It was right around, it was about five years ago, and right around when design thinking started to become something you would hear about often in innovation spaces, but nobody actually knew what it was. Parker was super helpful for me in terms of making it practical, making it accessible, showing us actually what it meant to run a workshop, and walking us through some paces that really helped us to define what we wanted that first 3 to 4 years of Jumpstart to look like. And it worked, which was like really important. It broke us out of our existing thinking, helped us to think about new paradigms. And so I'm just so excited to have him on the show, especially since work is changing in another very, very profound way yet again, given everything we're experiencing this year. So without any further ado, my man, Parker Gates, what's up, brother?
Hey, buddy. Thank you for having me, dude. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, man. Great to have you, dude. And I think there's a lot to cover right now. I don't want to talk entirely about, people moving into remote work. I don't want to talk about that entirely, but there was a headline today in Wall Street Journal that said Google is going remote until next July, right?
Yeah.
So they're just sort of putting it out there, putting the stake in the ground. And I saw on LinkedIn in my feed, there's a major agency that just announced they're going remote forever, right?
Right.
Forever,
yeah.
Forever. That's it. Like they had a beautiful office. Agencies, right? I mean, their space is like half the building, right?
Right. That's right.
It's like half the business, and And so for them to kind of say, yeah, we're just going 100% remote, it's just crazy, incredible. But they were talking about, wow, now it means we can open up our ability to hire anywhere around the country, right?
Right.
And you've always had sort of an interesting model to your business, because you and your co-founder and partner Anna are not in the same space. She doesn't live in Nashville, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and much of your work was around the world. I mean, one thing I know about you guys is, you travel a lot for work. You did have work for some large healthcare companies here in town, but a lot of your work was everywhere. So, I am interested as a design thinker, like practitioner. This is your life. This is the the capability you bring to people. How are you seeing this move to remote impact leaders that you're working with in terms of how they need to engage with their employees and make the workplace still something when it's nothing, when it's all about what we're doing right now, Zoom and collaboration software?
Man, it's a great topic. I was also skimming the news this morning and saw a couple of articles. A colleague of mine, a guy named Michael Arena, just published something in HR Exchange, which is like an HR site, right, for HR professionals. But he was talking about these kind of innovation networks that are dissolving right now, based on he thinks a lot about bonding and bridging networks, and so how some of those are going away, working in remote world, and even Simon Sinek said something a couple of weeks ago about how we're all realizing the benefits of being virtual and remote. That's great, but there's a lot of things that we're missing culturally, a little bit harder to quantify. So it feels like it's everywhere, and it's interesting too, because there's a lot of people that are saying like, oh, hey, this is right now we're at this really valuable spot, and we're measuring our productivity And so that's great. We're getting more out of people. They're not commuting. They're more focused, blah, blah, blah. And that's great. But they're not taking a look at things like, creativity or innovation work, which is a little bit different and it's a little bit harder to do. And we oftentimes think like we're big fans of of efficiency, but we're also, we know that oftentimes that efficiency can come at the cost of creativity, right? I'll give props to a local guy, but I remember seeing years ago, there was a video with Jack White, and he was talking a lot about keeping his picks at the back of the stage. So if he drops one, he's got to run all the way to the back to get it. He always plays old guitars that he has to tune up in between every single song. He makes sure that he spaces his instruments out on the stage where he has to run back and forth. His whole point being is like, if you make it too easy and too soft and too efficient, you grow soft and you get a little bit weak. And so he maintains his edge by making sure that everything is a little bit harder. I appreciate that. And so, anyway, as I think about like efficiency at the cost of creativity, it's like, how can we bring about more creativity in this remote way? And leaders are saying the same thing. So, we've taken a lot of our work on remote, and it's doable, it's passable, but it's not great. It's not as good as it used to be. One of our mentors, Perry Claiborne from the D School at Stanford, he says he's like, it'll never be my main character, but it's a really great like supporting actor.
Yeah.
The virtual work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we all are holding onto a view of the future where we will return, right? And I think largely the question is, how will this prolonged transitional period change us, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, there certainly have been, I think to call them anything short of movements is probably not giving them justice. There have been these movements online that have been very, very creative movements. Things I think about, and they're usually around software development. So I think about like the open source software movement, and the creation of these programming languages that power, large majority percentages of the internet today. Mm-hmm. And those things having been done all remote and all from communities and that have engaged, before we had great video chat, right? Where it was just like our IRC chat rooms and email and listservs and stuff like that, right? I wonder, like, what are your thoughts on any lessons that we may be able to pick up from the distributed technology world? We have people like Matt Mullenweg, who's been a leader in this space for a very, very long time. Obviously, WordPress powers 70% of the website world today, and so there was obviously some really strong success there. And I understand not every single form of creativity is the same, right? I understand some really do thrive off of that shared space, whereas others can live, especially ones that are designed for distributed networks, can. But are there any specific points or characteristics of those successful distributed cultures and movements that you or anyone else in your space has been identifying?
Absolutely, man. I think that's a great question. One of the things that we've noticed for sure that I think we're either just articulating what those distributed networks have been doing for a long time, or they've known it and we're just figuring it out, one or the other. And that's that a lot of innovation work that's done is done in the classic like design sprint format. A lot of people in a room and we're jamming on stuff for a week or something like that. We're doing empathy interviews and we're prototyping stuff and brainstorming and all of that. And it's all pretty extroverted work. And so we're big fans of collaboration. We're big fans of radical collaboration, very, diverse perspectives coming together. But what that doesn't make space for is those of us that are a little more introverted in nature, right? It doesn't allow time for thinking. It doesn't allow time for digesting ideas and like letting them really like steep and grow within us. And so it's all very like how you respond in the moment. And like most people know, if you're the loudest person in the room, oftentimes you can win just by being the loudest person in the room, not by having the best idea, right? And so we're just now learning like what it is to like give more space to ideation, give more space to introverted people, allow quiet to be a contributing factor, to give people space and time to really come up with something amazing. So that's been a big one, man.
That's
like,
massive. It's really,
huge.
really big, man. That's really big. Can I give you sort of a relevant point that hit me in the last 7 days where I think this is super relevant? So, so I received an invitation to an app that is in beta right now called Clubhouse last week, and it is very, very talked about in the Silicon Valley VC technology space, because it's been able to be the platform where these incredible voice-based conversations are happening that like you normally just wouldn't have access to, like the super mega stars. Like so far, the most interesting one that I got to listen to was Virgil Abloh, who is creative designer for Louis Vuitton. Was sort of talking about that, like what this experience is like being a Black creative director in a top design house in France. You know what I mean? Like, which is like, what, you know what I mean? Like, like it's actually pretty significant. And he's there just talking about it, and people are sort of asking him questions about it. And so it's this open room format. And the thing is, like, I do this show, I talk regularly on this show, and it's live, but it's actually just a conversation between you and I, and it's somebody who, let's say, at least half the time I know the person. But even outside of that, I'm totally comfortable having a conversation with a single person.
Right.
On this platform, I noticed, because I am ultimately an introvert, I noticed, I was like, wow, I'm not that comfortable sort of jumping into these conversations and like sharing my voice, and and part of what I'm noticing is many of the people who are clearly extroverts. Like I can hear it in their voice. I can see it in the way that they're engaging in these conversations. It's like, because you start a room and then all of a sudden a whole bunch of people will join and sort of listen to you. And it just made me think, wow, this is a space that it leans towards extroverts. And so there is this idea that different distributed networks can be designed for both, but where is the space where they both can coexist? And, and all good companies are made up of both, right? You know what I mean? And so I think that's what's really, really interesting about how platforms may be designed with some bias built into them that leans either more extrovert or more introvert, and could be very, very difficult for a company to bridge. That's a really great insight. Yeah, it struck us as pretty important. We've always realized the importance of giving time and space to the introvert crowd. I myself, I think these days, I used to measure right at about 51% extroverted. I speak all the time. I'm teaching in front of like groups all the time, leading workshops. And so I had 51%, but after I led that workshop, I would go back to my hotel room and I would not talk to anybody. I would be exhausted. And so I required quiet, to like rebuild. And these days I'm 51% introverted. So it's interesting to realize that not everybody is one or the other fully, we're somewhere on a spectrum. And how to allow for that. So I think you're right, that good companies consist of both. I think of BaseCamp as they're a group that I'm generally like pretty like impressed by. And for sure. They have a great system of working in like asynchronous ways and then coming together for more synchronous work when they need to. And that seems to be really productive for them from a development standpoint, software development standpoint. And I think it's worth noting about BaseCamp is that they don't just innovate on the product; they innovate on how to work. Like
that's right, like process.
The process and the philosophies. Like I feel like a lot of what they do, like if you read the book, like Getting Real, which is about sort of their way of the way that they develop software. It's not a process book. It's primarily a philosophy book. That sort of says like what matters, what doesn't matter. what's the why behind doing anything? So much of it is that sort of ends up making these downstream decisions for you, the philosophies that drive the decisions that you make downstream. And I think that's interesting that they, as a company, dedicated really since inception, right? Like before the books, they had the Signal to Noise blog, right?
Yep.
When they were 37 Signals, before they were
That's
BaseCamp.
right.
And it's like they've always sort of had two purposes. One was to work on the software package, right? BaseCamp. But the other, actually, we could say three because they also worked on Ruby on Rails. But right. But
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, DHH.
Oh yeah, DHH did. That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot he came up with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Big deal.
So even if they didn't officially as a company work on it, they were clearly, like, for a long time the number one sponsor of it.
Yeah.
So, but they also innovated on how to work, and they were and they became thought leaders on that. Like without it really being a thing that they sell per se, right? I mean,
Totally.
They give away the books, they talk about it openly. They're advocates for it, they're evangelists for it, but it's not like a service that they're selling. So I think there's something interesting about that too. For companies. Like, you have to be willing to lead and innovate on how work is going to look, because quite frankly, like there's no clear guides anymore,
No, dude. It's it feels like for a lot of us, most of the constraints and the guardrails have been removed. Not only from a physical location, but from synchronous or asynchronous, how we communicate, like all of it is just like, that's a wonderful thing to a degree. It's like, great. It's all to be designed, and it's good to have, like you said, people like them that are writing the rework, and it doesn't have to be crazy at work, and giving us good examples for what a modern day organization can look like. They're not killing themselves, and they're doing things in a really responsible, sustainable way,
right?
And taking care of their people, which I personally just think is huge.
Yeah,
it's a really big deal.
Definitely huge. So let's talk about like the work that Stoked does, and maybe even the broader industry that Stoked sort of sits in, just to sort of define that for the audience, and then I want to jump into how this pandemic has changed what that looks like.
Totally. So Stoked, when we got started about 10 years ago, we were primarily just delivering learning experiences for executive education. My co-founder Anna and I, we got our start. We coach executive education at the D School at Stanford, which is where we learned about design thinking, and we became such fans that we left our day jobs to go do that work. And so that was where it started. Over time, people were like, "Hey, you're guiding us in process. Can you guide us on a real project? Like, we have a thing that we want to do. So quit teaching us and lead us on a real project." And we said, "Sure." So we started doing that, and so project work kind of came up, but then accidentally we learned that we were having this strange like cultural effect on organizations, where after working with us, they started to collaborate differently, they started to behave differently, and their culture was shifting. That was not why we went in there. We thought it was cool, but it was not the thing that we were selling. We were selling and talking about innovation work and design work. 10 years ago, if you'd said, "Hey, we're going to come in and change your culture," nobody would have talked to us. Like, culture was a dirty word. It was a scary word.
Right.
And so that's what we do these days. We kind of offer these three main areas of services that we work in, which is education. So we still teach a lot of design thinking. We teach organizations how to be more innovative, how to behave more innovatively. And then we do a lot of culture work, working with organizations to take a look at where their culture is at now and where they want to move it to. And then we do a lot of real deal innovation project work, creating new products and services and experiences. And so, for the most part, that still happens kind of at an in-person, global scale, right? So
right.
A lot of that work is done thermogenically, is what I like to call it, right? It's like where you give some energy and you receive some energy back.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we do right now. And the services themselves look like lots of different things, but those are the big areas that we play in our education, culture, and innovation.
are your clients coming to you and saying, hey, everything you helped us to change and evolve about our culture worked really well when we were in the same space. Now we're online. Like, can you help us with the gaps? Are you are they reaching out to you talking about what that looks like?
It is just starting. I think it has taken the last, 90 days for people to adjust and to, figure out a way to take care of their children while they're working, right? Like,
totally.
So, gosh, I think we're just getting to a place where they're like, hey, we're on Zoom all the time. We're all exhausted, trying to figure out like what that's all about. And so I think they're clearly seeing that there are some cultural issues with only meeting virtually all the time. And so there's been some great research that I think it was in the New York Times maybe a month ago, talking about some of the problems with virtual working is that when I'm looking at you and I say something, I'm expecting some kind of micro expression that I probably won't even consciously register, right?
Yeah.
But I don't get it because there's a lag or there's a glitch in the software or the resolution's not perfect.
Yeah.
And so when I don't receive that feedback, my mind starts thinking, oh my God, why didn't he react to that in a way that I thought he would? Is he mad at me? What's going on? So I'm doing all this processing unconsciously, and it leaves me to like have a really weird conversation with you.
Yeah.
And not the same kind of conversation that you and I would have in person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so people are starting to see that, and that's just kind of the neuroscience side of it. And so not to mention the fact that we're all sitting down, at Stoked, we talk a lot about posture and how important,
Dude,
right?
Hold on. I have to stop you right now because so this desk is a stand-up desk and it stays lifted until it's showtime. I can't stand and do the show. I have to sort of sit because there's just too much stuff and I need to, it's just sort of, it's a posture thing. The posture people expect in a show is for me to be sitting.
Right.
Dude, I have not sat this much. And sitting is like, people say like sitting is new cigarettes. It really is.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
if you're in tune with your body and you try to take care of your body with, mobility work, stretching, any of that kind of stuff, you see the restrictions and all the, literally, I'm in more pain.
Right.
Because of the last 4 months of working at home because of sitting. I'm literally more pain.
So think of the downstream effects of that, right? Like my back is tight, my hamstrings are tight right now. And so I'm a little uncomfortable for the rest of the day. That's going to play a part of my energy. Part of my energy is going to dealing with that. I may have to take some Advil later. I got to sit down in child's pose every 3 or 4 hours. It requires a lot to work in this new way, So all of those things are so important to how we behave towards each other, man. It's huge.
Yeah. I'm glad that you sort of brought up the sitting thing because one thing that I have definitely noticed is people who were already, I'll just call it advanced in their well-being practices, we're probably a little better prepared for this moment, but the people who were thinking about it, about to start getting it going, you know what I mean? Like this is hard. This is really, really hard because now it's like you don't have the cultural cues of even of the things that like I'm sort of happy I don't have to deal with anymore, like the commuting. I'm really glad I don't have the commuting, but there is something in that cultural cue around commuting that breaks up the day differently. And I have found myself working just longer days, without sort of a stopping point. It's interesting. Like even something as simple as the satisfaction I used to get from inbox zero is like diminished. Like I'm pretty consistently on inbox zero and it doesn't do anything to make me feel more like I'm getting stuff done or I'm on top of stuff, I don't know if we're still on topic anymore, but just talking about the weirdness of working in this moment, and how that can, how one thing affects the next thing, affects the next thing, affects the next thing. And all of these things are ultimately affecting work culture. I mean, it's impossible for them not to. So, Yeah,
and we're seeing burnout. We're seeing a lot of those things happen, right? So they're saying that they're already measuring a higher level of burnout, a higher level of depression, and so people are super productive, but they're sad. And that's not awesome at all. And I'll be the first person to argue that that's not productive. If our people are not doing well, if they're not healthy and feeling good, that's in no way productive. I don't give a shit how much work they got done.
Yep.
Right. That part's irrelevant to me.
Yep.
That's not sustainable.
So what's a hopeful note? These shows go fast. We're in the final 5 minutes. So
oh wow.
Yeah, these shows go fast, man. What's a hopeful note around the innovators who are looking at these challenges and obviously, saying, hey, these are new problems, and they're not problems like that are going to go away right away. These are problems we're going to be living with for some period of time. Where is there inspiration around people really leaning in to solve this stuff?
For me, I think one or two things that are pretty exciting are, because our normal construct is blown up, we're having to rethink stuff. And so as much as I think COVID is annoying, and I think it's annoying,
same.
our constructs are blown up. So we're having to kind of recreate the wheel to some degree. And I think that that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
If I am comfy and everything is going my way and things are exactly how I want them, my propensity to change is very low, right? So this creates a new set of circumstances where I have to re-engage and be like, all right, what's the most important thing here? What are the unmet needs that, go back to the beginning and say, okay, how would I design a workshop, for instance? Our team, when our first client said, hey, we had this big thing planned, it's not happening in person anymore, can you take it remote? Our first prompt was like, okay, great. How do we not only take this remote, but how do we make this better than it ever was before? Mm-hmm. And so it required us to re-engage in some really fun, creative thinking and get weird, which is a great way to approach it. So I think that's actually a good thing, man. I think as much as I don't enjoy this moment, I think being pushed outside of our comfort zones is always a helpful thing for me. And my hope is that we look back soon and we can laugh at this and, be like, oh, well, it'll be hard to laugh just because, the medical consequences, the people that have passed away, that's brutal. But I hope that we can think about this in a different way other than just being mired in oh man, this is brutal.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's a great point. The idea that we are being forced out of our comfort zone, we're being forced to rethink this and look at things that we previously just accepted as hey, we've solved that problem, so we don't need to go back to that. And I think in each one of those areas that we re-look at it, sometimes we might really find a better way, and sometimes we might find a greater appreciation for this thing that we've lost because out of necessity we can't be around each other. You know what I mean? Sometimes we may just find, guess what? This is only going to ever be a supporting actor. It's never going to be the lead actor. But we're grateful that we're able to have the supporting actor in the meantime. And holy shit, can't wait to get back to what we had and appreciate it even more than we did before. Right? Yeah, dude. I think that the gratitude will come as a means of a newfound perspective. But then again, going back to our introverts, man, we get to treat them with some respect and give them what they need to do this work with the rest of us. So yeah. Awesome, man. Well, this was a fun conversation. This is a good way for me to start the week, man.
That's right.
I'm definitely at that point where I told you before we got on, where I'm getting a lot done, but I've just been a little more tired lately. You know what I mean? Yeah. I've been a little more tired lately. And I think some of it is closing out some long-standing projects, but also just this is heavy on so many levels and so many ways. And, just trying to be kind and, to myself and, just sort of accept that this is difficult. And so this conversation was helpful for me to just sit in that space and acknowledge that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Awesome, dude.
Thanks, dude. Hey, listen, everybody
Thank
out there,
you.
follow Parker online. I love his handle at Crooked Cop. That's like the best. That's the best social media handle on earth, dude. At Crooked Cop.
It takes on a new relevance right now, but
on Instagram and Twitter, stokedproject.com. You definitely want to sign up for their email list, because what I love about them is they create and communicate when they want, but whenever they do, it's super, super authentic and really hits home in a fantastic way. So, if you sign up for like whatever emails that they have, you're not going to get hit like every week with something, which is really cool. But when they do decide to send you something, it's pretty badass. So stokedproject.com. And also, if your company is interested in, sort of exploring their services, I can tell you, like I said, like I started the show with, working with Parker and his team definitely had a lot to do with the success that we achieved in the founding years of Jumpstart Foundry as a healthcare fund. So can't recommend them more. Create and orchestrate in stores now. Go get it if you haven't already. The podcast, Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe, everywhere that you get podcasts, and follow me online everywhere at Marcus Whitney. That's it. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Until then, let's build a new normal and take care of yourself, y'all.
Thank you for tuning in to Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe.